A very pleasant good morning to all of you children. I'm sure all of you are eagerly awaiting to listen to the story of the third chapter in the first language English text. Now this is a beautiful story, children. So let us now hop on board for a jolly ride to the land of tales. The title of the lesson is The Gift of the Magi. Remember children, it's pronounced as Magi, not Maggie. This story was written by an American short story writer who went by the pen name of O. Henry, whose actual name was William Sidney Potter. The unique characteristic of O. Henry's writing is giving a very interesting, unexpected twist at the end of the story. So also here we have a very interesting story called The Gift of the Magi. Now before we begin, let us look at some of the words in the glossary given at the end of the lesson in the textbook. The first word, imputation. Imputation means accusing someone of something or suggesting something very negative about a person. A committee has been set up to inquire into the imputation of murder against him. The next word, parsimony. I'm sure all of you know what being stingy is. You know, a person who's very stingy, refuses to part with his money, keeps all his money, his gold, his wealth with him. Such a person is said to be a parsimonious person. So parsimony means extreme unwillingness to part with money. Look at that. A poor, old, hungry man is asking for food, and look what the rich man says, "Get out of my way, you wretch." So that rich man is a parsimonious person. Now let's look at the sentence. Gokul's attitude of parsimony brought about his downfall. The next word, sniffle. Inhaling air through the nose in short, audible breaths. You know, if you take away a bar of chocolate from a child just before it's about to unwrap the chocolate bar and eat it, you just snatch it away. You know how the child is going to cry? Immediately the child will burst out at a fresh burst of grief. But after some time, the grief abates and the child starts sniffling. You know how it sniffles? That is the way the child sniffles. Next we come across the word janitor. A janitor is a person who takes care of the maintenance and cleanliness of the building in which he stays. Okay, so a janitor, since he's not very skilled or educated, is paid very low wages. Next we come across the word ransacked. To go through a place, stealing things, causing damage. I'm sure in movies you've seen, these IT officials, income tax department officials, they come, they raid the house, and when they leave the house, you should see, the house is in shambles. Everything is thrown upside down. It's all higgledy-piggledy by the time they get out of the house. Look at that picture, how the burglars are ransacking the house. It could be a burglar searching for something, thorough search of something. That action is called ransacking. Next we come across the word depreciate. To diminish in value over a period of time. Now you'll know that we are all undergoing this great pandemic, corona pandemic. During this time, there's very less money being generated in the economy. So the value of properties has gone down. So we say the value of the property has depreciated due to the pandemic. Next, let's go on to the lesson. The Gift of the Magi, written by O. Henry. Now look at this map. This is a map of the African continent, the Asian continent and the European continent put together, in which you find a small red colored country right in the center called Israel. Now Israel is a very small country. Now let us see what happened in Israel. As you all know, history, the time in history, if you represent it, in a time scale, there is an incident which divides history into two parts. BCE, as it is now called, earlier it was called BC, before Christ, and the other part, Anno Domini, the time in which we are living, that is after the death of our Lord. In Latin, that is what it means. Now this incident which divided history into two is the birth of Jesus Christ. Where was Jesus Christ born? See, he was born in that small little country of Israel at a place called Bethlehem. Now, when Jesus was born there, three wise kings, they were supposed to be astrologers, and information tells us that they were people who believed in the religion of Zoroastrianism. These people, they were astrologers who studied the celestial bodies. They came to know through their study that a baby was born in Israel. So, they traveled all the way from the eastern part of the globe in order to see this little baby Jesus, and they offered him gold, frankincense and myrrh. Okay, look at that. The exchange of gifts, therefore we say, at Christmas time is a tradition practiced by Christians all over the world, following the gesture of these three wise men who were called the Magi, who came from the eastern part of the globe to West Asia where Jesus was born. They offered him gold and frankincense and myrrh on that first Christmas morn. Now, these wise men, they came there, they offered these gifts to Jesus. Now, you might wonder what frankincense is. I'm sure all of you know what gold is. Frankincense is a kind of an incense, a kind of an object that gives a pleasant, fragrant smell. Myrrh is a kind of a liquid, a perfume that is put on a dead body. So, these three wise men came and offered these precious gifts to Jesus. Now, there is a song which tells us how these wise men came. Now, you might wonder how they found their way in the desert. You see the screen, you find a star over there in the sky. The star led these wise men to the stable where Jesus was born. Now, you might wonder, why is man teaching us about this? Well, there is a relevance to what I'm telling you. The story that you're going to read has a relevance to this story of Christmas. So now, let us just look at that song. We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. Oh, star of wonder, star of light, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light. Born the King on Bethlehem's plain, gold I bring to crown him again. King forever, ceasing never, over us all to reign. Oh, star of wonder, star of light, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light. Well, I'm sure after having listened to the lyrics of that song, you would have understood that the three wise men, they are asking the star to lead them to the place where Jesus was born. Now let's look at the names of these wise men. The first of them was called Caspar, who hailed from India. Surprising, isn't it? Yeah, he came from India. Melchior from Persia, Balthazar from Arabia. Extremely rich men who followed the star, which led them to the stable where Jesus was born. Now look at the picture on the top of the screen. You find the three wise men. The one with the green dress with a red turban has a vessel from which, sweet smell is wafting through, emanating into the atmosphere. That is frankincense. The one with the blue has got gold in his hand. The one at the back has got myrrh. Myrrh in a vessel, a kind of a perfume that is put on a dead body. And then down below you have the picture of the three wise men going and worshipping baby Jesus. Now, after having understood that the three wise men traveled such a long distance over the desert, they came, they worshipped baby Jesus, and they gave him very costly gifts. It is from that act, that gesture of the wise men, that Christians all over the world today exchange gifts during Christmas time. But how do you exchange gifts with your beloved ones when you do not have any money to buy a gift? So now we come across the short story written by O. Henry, who talks about the love between a man and his wife and how they sell their most prized possession in order to buy a gift for each other during Christmas time. The man's name was James Dillingham, lovingly called Jim by his wife, whose name was Della. Now, this couple lived in a small dilapidated house which had a letterbox in which no letter could be dropped and a bell from which no mortal hands could coax a ring. Now, you might wonder what I'm talking about. Look at that word, highlighted word, dilapidated. Now, children, you have to understand that when you learn a language, it is not compulsory that you have to learn only the words that are given in the text, which are a little above your comprehension. No, you can also learn words which are connected to the context of that lesson. Now, this word is not there in the textbook, but the story talks about the kind of house in which the James Dillinghams lived, a very old ruined house. So, you can use the word dilapidated to indicate the condition of a house that is in ruins. Now, look at the kind of house in which they lived. If you went to that house and pressed the bell, no sound would ever come out because the bell was not working. And then they had a letterbox in which no letter would be dropped because nobody had any contact with these people. Why? Because they were very, very poor. Such was the dire conditions in which these people lived. Now, it was Christmas the next day. This was the day before Christmas, and Della and Jim knew that they had to give a gift to each other. Now, let us see what Della did first. She wanted to present her husband with a beautiful gift. So, you know what she did? She sat and she started counting the money that she had saved, 1 and 2 at a time, by bulldozing the grocer, the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheeks burnt with the silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. I'm sure you're going to say, ma'am, this sounds Greek and Latin to us, right? Okay. Now look at the picture. Della is bargaining there. No, she's bargaining. She's trying to save as much money as possible. Look at that sentence, by bulldozing the grocer. Bulldozing, you've all seen a bulldozer, right? You know, that huge heavy machine. If you get caught under it, finish. That's the end of you, okay? So, bulldozing there means so much of force that the shopkeeper, whether it was a grocer, vegetable man or the butcher, they could not do anything but accept the way that she was bargaining. And a person who was standing next to her would feel embarrassed. That person's cheeks would burn when he realizes this lady is so stingy, she's so parsimonious. Oh my God, look at the way she's bargaining. That is what another person would think, because such close dealing, you know, so much of bargaining gave the imputation that Della was a parsimonious person, which means it made another person standing next to her feel embarrassed or ashamed to realize how much she bargained. And so that person would attribute the quality of parsimony to Della. That is the meaning of this paragraph, okay? So, close dealing with the grocer, butcher and the vegetable man by bulldozing them, bargaining with such force, would make an onlooker feel ashamed or embarrassed. But then, poor Della, she had nothing else that she could do. The earnings from her husband's income was so less. So she had to save as much as possible. Now, after having saved that much for such a long period of time, when she finally sits down and counts the money, what does she find? There. She counted. She found that she had only $1.87. What can you buy out of $1.87? Just imagine. Out of desperation, she just flopped down on the shabby little couch and she started howling, sobbing, sniffling, with the sniffles predominating. See how pretty Della looks and what a lot of hair she's got. Now, look at that sentence. She flopped down on the shabby little couch, howled, sobbing and sniffling, with the sniffles predominating. What's the meaning of sobbing? A fresh outburst of grief. You know, you cry. That kind of crying is sobbing. But after the fresh outburst of grief is gone and your sorrow is a little abated, how do you sniffle? After your grief is gone, So, the author here says, Della first of all howled. Howl means she screamed. She said, "Oh, what will I do with just $1.87? That she howled. Then she started crying, sobbing her heart out. Finally, now after you cry for some time, tears stop coming out of your eyes. So, she started sniffling. And sniffles are the ones which predominate in any person's life. That means a kind of a sorrow that cannot be eased, because of which we sniffle. So she kept on sniffling. Now, let us see what James and Della did to buy a gift for each other. James and Della owned a possession. Each of them owned a possession in which both of them took a mighty pride. Jim's possession was a gold watch, a beautiful gold watch, which was a family heirloom. Now look at the word highlighted there. The letter H is silent in pronunciation. We pronounce it as heirloom. Again, this word is not in the text, but in the context you can learn this word. This word heirloom means a very costly, expensive object that is handed over from the father to the son, to the grandson, to the great-grandson, and so on and so forth, throughout different generations of the same family. And these people preserve that object with so much of care and love, because not only is it expensive, it has a great sentimental value. So, Jim had a gold watch which was a family heirloom. It had been given to his father by his grandfather, a beautiful gold watch. There, you have a picture of that watch. Unfortunately, the watch had no chain attached to it. So how could he wear the watch around his wrist? Poor man. He had to keep it in his pocket all the time. So he kept it in his pocket. The other treasure, the possession that Della had, was a beautiful, long, lovely hair. See that. Look at the picture as she stands in front of the mirror and looks at her hair like a sheet, it almost made itself a garment for her. That's what the author says. Look at her brown tresses rippling down, shining like a cascade of brown waters. Her hair was beautiful, long, thick, luscious, wavy, beautiful hair. It reached right below her knee, making itself a garment for her. Now, these were the two precious possessions of the James Dillinghams. Della was mighty proud of her hair, and Jim was mighty proud of his gold watch. Now, let us see how the author compares these two possessions of Jim and Della to two other people who are mentioned in the Bible. He compares the pride that Jim and Della took in their respective possessions to the actions of two people mentioned in the Bible. Now, let's see who these two people are. I'm sure most of you would have heard about great King Solomon the Wise. He was called Wise King Solomon. Now, the great King Solomon, he was a ruler of Israel. He was widely acclaimed for his wisdom and riches, and his reign was an era of unprecedented prosperity due to his wisdom. Now, what is the meaning of the word unprecedented? Something that's never been done before, heard before, liked before, achieved before. That means something that has not been done before at all. King Solomon was so rich, basically because of his wisdom. That is why he was a very prosperous king. Next, we come across another person mentioned in the Bible. Of course, her name is not mentioned, but it is said that there was a country called Sheba, which is in Arabia. This kingdom of Sheba was ruled by a queen. So she was called the Queen of Sheba, an extremely beautiful woman who came with a caravan loaded with gold and jewels and spices to the court of King Solomon to test his wisdom. Now, what is the meaning of the word caravan? There are two meanings, but let us look at the meaning in this context. Caravan refers to a retinue of camels on which people travel across the desert. So she traveled with a whole lot of her followers, carrying gold and jewels and spices to the court of King Solomon. So she traveled with all these things and gave them to King Solomon after testing his wisdom. Let's see the comparison. Author says that if King Solomon had been the janitor with all his treasures piled up in the basement, if Jim had just gone down the stairs to the basement and he had seen King Solomon and he had seen the room filled with so much of wealth, gold and silver and what not so much of wealth, he would have still taken out the watch from his pocket, seen the time in front of the king, and he would have, seen it from all angles, put it back into his pocket in such a way that King Solomon, in spite of all his wealth, would have plucked at his beard with jealousy. He would have felt so jealous, thinking, I have so much, but I don't have Jim's gold watch. Jim thought his gold watch was costlier, more beautiful, better from all aspects compared to the riches of King Solomon. That is the kind of value that Jim had for his gold watch. Likewise, if the Queen of Sheba had lived in the flat across the air shaft, you know what Della would have done? She would have let out her hair out of the window someday to dry, just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. Queen of Sheba was such a rich queen, but Della thought her hair had more value, more beauty than all the riches of the Queen of Sheba put together. Now look at that sentence, children. The third line, it says, Della would have let her hair out the window. If you look into the textbook, it is written like this: she would have let her hair out the window. You might wonder what happened to the preposition of. Yes, both usages are correct. The author has written out the window, that is also right. You can also say out of the window, which is also correct. Okay. Now, Della wanted to give a beautiful gift to her beloved husband. A gift that would be very rare, sterling. You know what's the meaning of sterling? This is a word in the text. Sterling, again, there are two meanings. One refers to the currency. Okay. Here the meaning of the word sterling is something very beautiful, noble, difficult to come by, very difficult to acquire, difficult to possess, so great, so valuable. That's the meaning of the word sterling. So she wanted to give that kind of a gift to her husband. But then she looked at the money she had in her hand. What did she have? $1.87. She knew that money would not suffice. So she knew she had something else more valuable. She went and looked at herself, see, in the pier glass between the windows, and saw her long, beautiful hair. See how she admires her hair. She stands in front of the window. And as she stands there, you know what happens? She's just looking at her hair. A brilliant thought suddenly struck her. But then her face lost color. And she let down her hair. Let it fall to its full length. Once she faltered for a minute as that thought struck her, And when she faltered, a tear or two dropped on the worn out red carpet. The thought that came to her mind made her shed tears. But with great resolution, she wiped her tears. She said, no, I'm not going to cry. So with great resolution, she put on her old brown jacket. She put on her old brown hat, and with a whirl of skirts. You know what the meaning of whirl is? Rotating. Her skirts were rotating around her. She didn't want to stay lest she starts having doubts about giving up her hair. So the moment she decided, she thought she should execute her plan. So with a whirl of skirts, a sparkle still in her eyes. What is that sparkle? The anticipation of seeing the happiness on the face of her dear husband when she gives him the gift. That is why she had a sparkle in her eyes. She fluttered out the door and ran down the stairs onto the street. Again, fluttered out the door. You could also say fluttered out of the door. In the text it is written fluttered out the door. Both are correct. After running down the stairs, Della went to a saloon where the sign read, Madame Sofronie, hair kinds of all goods. Madame means, in the French language we call it Madame, which means madam in English. There was a shop, and in front of that shop, this was the sign written, hair kinds of all goods. She ran up the flight of stairs, panting for breath. She looked at Madame Sofronie and said, will you buy my hair? Now Madame Sofronie was a little surprised. She said, I buy hair. Take your hats off and let's have a sight at the looks of it. Down rippled the brown cascade. Madame Sofronie, look at that picture. She just lifted up that lovely mass of hair in her hand. She tested it and she said, okay, I'll pay you just $20. With a practiced hand, she looked at that beautiful mass, and that is the amount she offered. Della thought that she might change her mind, so she said, come on, give me the money quickly, which means cut my hair and take it. So Madame Sofronie cut that beautiful hair, gave her the $20, and with the money that she had earned like that, she ran out into the street, started ransacking the stores for Jim's present. Now let us stop the lesson with this portion being completed. We will continue the next part of the lesson in the next session. So now let's go on to the vocabulary exercises. Let's look at the usage of phrases. What is a phrase? A combination of two or more words which are incomplete in meaning, and they consist of nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs combined with prepositions. Now, phrases have two kinds of meanings. Literal meaning, which means the meaning exactly as it is given by the words that are used in the phrase. The boy looked down upon the valley from the mountain top, which means the boy was standing on the top of the mountain and he was looking down upon the valley. Okay, this is the literal meaning. The next is an idiomatic meaning. This means the words mean something, but the meaning of the words in the context in which it is used is something different. The British looked down upon the Indians during the pre-independent era. This is the idiomatic meaning. Looked down upon here means to disrespect, to ill-treat, not to give enough importance to a person. Reported speech. Reporting the words spoken by a person to another person without changing the meaning is called reported speech. While changing a sentence from the direct to the indirect speech, there are many changes to be made, as you can see on the screen. Due to paucity of time, I am unable to explain how it is changed. That is why I have given you a link at the bottom of the screen. Please click on that link and you will be able to understand how we change sentences from direct to indirect speech. Now here is an example. Amit said, I went to Agra last week. Amit said that he had gone to Agra last week. Sushil said to Sushma, have you had your lunch? Sushil asked Sushma whether she had had her lunch. Now look at the home assignments. These are the questions given. Please answer these questions and hand over the answers to your respective subject teachers' children. In the grammatical part of the homework, you have to replace the verb in each of the following sentences with an appropriate phrasal verb. Extinguish the fire. The exams have been postponed. The company has to compensate the loss to the employees. How long can they survive without water? Change into reported speech. This is the homework. Tony said, can I meet you tomorrow? To his friend Bobby. Einstein is the greatest scientist the world has ever known, said one scientist to the other. These books are very interesting to read, said the librarian to the student. Come here right now, the captain said to the corporal. Now these are the questions that have been given to you. Please answer these questions, hand them over to your teacher. Now we have finished listening to half the story of the gift of the Magi. We started the journey together. Now it is time to alight, So, see you on the next journey, children. Hope you all enjoyed this story. Take care. God bless.